Good evening. Welcome to On Air. I'm Klara Syrewicz. Trickle pay could easily serve as the current motto of the pharmaceutical industry, now joining forces with Donald Trump to exert unprecedented pressure on Europe's national health systems. Have Europeans really been freeloading off America's medical bill? Dressing up as Big Pharma could make a fitting Halloween costume. The industry has long been the world's favourite boogeyman, blamed for just about everything, not least the staggering cost of healthcare. Yet now, in the US, drug prices are expected to fall while Europe braces for higher costs, thanks to Trump's latest policies. Or will they? That's what we'll unpack in this episode. But before we get political, let's look at how the pharma industry actually works. If you're fond of conspiracy theories, you'd say Big Pharma, built on providing products for the sick, has little incentive to eradicate disease. But then it's the same industry creating life-saving or life-altering drugs, doing more good than many other sectors. Looking at you, Big Tobacco. And admittedly, it's difficult to create new medicines. It takes years, brilliant minds, and tons of money just to get something tested and approved. So, is Big Pharma really as evil as it's made out to be? As industry executive Martin Shkreli bluntly put it,
"My shareholders expect me to make the most profit. That's the ugly, dirty truth. No one wants to say it. No one's proud of it. But this is a capitalist society, capitalist system, and capitalist rules."
In 2015, Shkreli became a hated figure in the US after his company bought the rights to a cancer and HIV drug and raised its price by 5,000% overnight. 3 years later, he was in jail for fraud. But his crude honesty still defines the industry's core reality. Profits first, patients second. A logic that sets off a chain reaction of deeper issues. In his best-selling book, Bad Pharma, Oxford University physician and scientist Ben Goldacre explains why the industry is fundamentally broken. His biggest culprits are selective reporting, publication bias, and secrecy. In practice, studies with disappointing or inconvenient results often vanish. As Goldacre puts it, sponsors get the answer they want. In the best case, a drug's effectiveness is overstated. In the worst, its harmful side effects are concealed. The opioid crisis now gangrening the US is a pharma-made disaster.
Some patients may be afraid of taking opioids because they're perceived as too strong or addictive. But that is far from actual fact. Less than 1% of patients taking opioids actually become addicted.
Drug manufacturers deliberately downplayed the very addictive nature of their products and marketed them aggressively, even for minor pain, and long after the devastation became clear. Americans are right to feel conned. None of these companies have faced real accountability from federal authorities, only class action and state-level lawsuits. Then there's the deliberate bad designing of clinical trials and the industry's chronic lack of transparency. You think the data from clinical trials of life-saving drugs or ones with severe side effects should be in the public domain? Well, wrong. You'll need an army of lawyers just to see them, if you ever do. Pharmaceutical companies hide behind commercial confidentiality, and often rightly so. After all, developing a patent takes years of work and billions in investment. But that secrecy swings to the other extreme. A recent example is the group lawsuit against pharma giant Johnson & Johnson involving around 67,000 plaintiffs. The company stands accused of withholding evidence since the 1960s that its talcum baby powder contained cancer-causing asbestos. Worse, internal documents suggest executives pressured the FDA to lower test sensitivity, ensuring asbestos fibers wouldn't be detected at all. Which brings us to unethical marketing. Pharma companies insist that high prices are needed to fund costly drug development, yet they pour twice as much money into marketing as they do into research. And it's hardly an industry scraping by to fund R&D. The 4 top US firms alone made $261 billion in net profit over the last 5 years, so nearly 22% of their revenue. That's almost double the 11.7% profit margin of other S&P 500 giants. So where does that money go? So far this year, Pharma has dumped nearly $2 billion just into TV ads, just in the US, and the year is not even over. I'm not suggesting anything, but one way to free up a fortune for research or cheaper medication would be to ban prescription drug advertising in the US, as it's done everywhere else in the world except New Zealand. I mean, sure, we'd be deprived of Serena Williams talking about her headaches or Kim Kardashian assuring us from the vantage point of her medical wisdom that a prescription drug for pregnant women doesn't harm the baby. Yet with the industry spending nearly $400 million on lobbying in the US last year, I wouldn't expect much change. But the most exasperating myth is that high drug prices reflect R&D costs. A recent study quoted by the Harvard Medical School found no connection between how much a drug company spends on R&D and the drug's final price. So besides patients indirectly footing the bill for Kim Kardashian's latest facelift, why are drugs so costly in the US yet cheaper in Europe? There are several reasons. In Europe, a single negotiating body, usually the government, decides whether to accept the price set by drug makers. In the US, a plethora of intermediaries dilutes buyers' bargaining power. Also, nitpicky Europeans are more inclined to ask whether a new drug actually beats what's already out there and at what cost. Pharma companies like to cosmetically tweak existing formulas to extend patents and thus higher prices without facing competition from generic drug makers. European regulators take this into account and may refuse reimbursement. But even in Europe, costs vary widely. Last year, Germans spent an average of €627 per person on medicines, while Poles spent just €134. Expecting US drug prices to match Europe's without creating an entirely new healthcare system is like promising 1,000% price cuts.
We're going to get, in some cases, 1,000% reduction. This is going to have a huge impact.
Don't get me wrong, it's a very noble endeavour considering the mind-boggling medical costs imposed on Americans. But it's hard to reconcile Trump's concern with his track record when A, he opposed capping insulin at $35 for Medicare patients, B, backed big cuts to Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act, C, slapped 100% tariffs on pharmaceuticals, which will drive prices even higher. But, apparently there's a solution.
Most favored nation prices.
Meant to match US drug prices to the cheapest in other OECD countries. It sounds as promising as that 1,000%, and it will essentially do this. Pharma companies wanting to avoid tariffs on their foreign-made drugs will negotiate individual deals with the new digital platform, Trump RX, controlled by the president. On that platform, some of their prescription drugs will then be sold directly to consumers at discounts. Now, predicted prices on the platform are already higher than what insured patients would pay, and they're still unaffordable for the uninsured. Those payments wouldn't count towards deductibles or other benefits, sometimes actually raising healthcare spending. And so far, only Pfizer has joined, so it's far from an industry-wide program. Overall, the policy could be called most favored drug makers, as it lets select pharma companies dodge those new tariffs. In fact, they don't even need to join Trump RX, since the president offers another get-out-of-jail-free card if they present plans to build more manufacturing in the US. Those construction projects, when and if they happen, as it's easy to promise lots of things just to make the president look good, won't reduce drug costs for US consumers because, for one, manufacturing in the US equals much higher production costs. What this may do is bring some jobs into the US, but mostly for highly qualified workers, as these projects focus on R&D rather than mass production. Under this scheme, price reductions appear minimal, while the very chaotic policy doesn't change much in the existing system, and it certainly doesn't make Big Pharma accountable for what it spends its enormous revenues on. The grand gestures even appear to benefit those companies, and their stocks are actually soaring. Why? Because this will offer them an excellent excuse to raise prices in Europe. Since Trump wants US drug prices tied to the lowest in the OECD, Pharma now has every reason to artificially raise European prices and create a false baseline, so Americans don't get too big a discount. Hence, Pharma profits are safe and might even grow. After all, Trump has urged companies to push back against European regulators, claiming it would stop global freeloading. The effects are visible. Big Pharma feels emboldened. Eli Lilly's CEO labelled the UK probably Europe's worst for drug prices and warned it wouldn't see many new medicines unless it bends the knee. This was just one of many similar threats. A senior UK official called it a pretty sinister and likely coordinated pressure campaign by the industry. Pity to the European countries dependent on pharma exports. The UK has already caved, reportedly striking a drug deal with Trump, meaning British patients could pay billions more for some medicines in exchange for lower tariffs. But the country's medical products will still cost the same or more in the US. A July deal with the EU supposedly capped US tariffs at 15%, but individual companies still attract Trump's ire, especially unfriendly ones like Novo Nordisk, which accounts for 6.7% of Denmark's GDP. Just a reminder, Denmark refused to hand over Greenland when Trump asked for it, so there. It's springtime for Trump and Big Pharma, but not necessarily for people buying medication, whether here or in the US. Last year, global pharmaceutical revenue reached $1.7 trillion, with growth expected through 2030. This one-year value is comparable to the GDPs of Spain or Mexico. Rising drug prices are often framed as a natural economic trend, but they're not inevitable. They reflect political and societal choices that prioritize a profit-first model for healthcare and medical innovation above all else. As the Financial Times reminds us,
while pharmaceutical companies receive much lower prices in the UK and other European markets than in the US, these prices are still far above their marginal costs of production.
When you put together the words drugs and mafia, one thing probably comes to mind. But in this report, we'll be talking about perfectly legal drugs, in fact, life-saving medications that were diverted from Poland by criminal groups exploiting differences in Europe's drug prices.
Poland's medicine watchdog, the Chief Pharmaceutical Inspectorate, has so far imposed more than 156 million euros in fines for the illegal export of life-saving medicines. The illicit export network, often called the drug mafia, diverted prescription drugs intended for Polish patients to Western Europe, where prices are far higher. Medicines costing the equivalent of around 7 euros in Poland can sell for up to 90 euros abroad. Officials say this black market trade deprived thousands of patients of vital treatments for cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. Between 2022 and 2024, the group submitted nearly 40,000 fake prescriptions to the National Health Fund, many issued under the names of residents of care homes and long-term treatment facilities who never received any medication. In total, the National Health Fund's losses are estimated at around 19 million euros. Former inspectors and pharmacists describe the government's enforcement as insufficient. Many fines targeted shell companies and fake pharmacies set up in the names of homeless people or foreign frontmen. These entities dissolved before authorities could collect penalties. In 2019, tougher laws made illegal drug exports punishable by up to 10 years in prison, but prosecutions remain rare. Recently, prosecutors in Gdańsk charged 27 people, including pharmacists, doctors, and an attorney, accusing them of running a nationwide network that trafficked drugs worth more than 3.5 million euros. Raids uncovered warehouses filled with thousands of medicine packages, often stored in unsafe conditions. Authorities seized cash, gold, and luxury goods. Although several defendants now face prison sentences of up to 15 years, trials are still ongoing.
Please stay healthy and enjoy this holiday. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.